Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Fifth Down College Football Talk Show. We are on episode number 8. We're sorry for missing last week. I don't know. It was just weren't in the mood for personal stuff. But nevertheless, we're back. We'll try not to miss too many times these coming weeks because it's getting to the important times of the year for a lot of the news and discussion, and really what this episode will be focused around is the first college football playoff rankings. They were unveiled this past Tuesday, and it's had quite a strong reaction from a couple of sides on where teams fall, but we'll also give our touch and talk about our top teams. But let's go ahead and talk about the rankings. So number one and two were not really big surprises in the top two. Alabama and Georgia. Georgia just got done playing Florida in the Florida-Georgia game. Florida took, I think 6 plays for Georgia to not only tie the game but take the lead. But it was just after it went really slowly. But it wasn't a pretty game. Okay, I was wrong. It took no. Dang. Okay, so. I'm sorry about that. I got that wrong. So, if I remember correctly, the Georgia game, right? The Georgia-Florida game, it was tied 0-0 up until about the end of the middle of the second, where it took, I think it was about 8 or 9 plays for the game to turn into 17-0 Georgia. At the end of the second half, Georgia just steamrolled them. It wasn't even remotely close. Georgia once again continuing to be the best team in the country, but one concern was about really the performance of Stetson Bennett, who didn't really have his best performance with 2 picks in that game. But nevertheless, Georgia's defense showed up once again and just took control of the Florida Gators, which really isn't that shocking, considering how these two teams have treaded these past few weeks. But moving on to number 2, how I throw your team, the Bama Crimson Tide. We weren't here when they played against A&M, but that really dramatic loss, which but they got it done this past. They're actually on a bye week this week, but honestly, a lot of people have an issue with it, with Alabama still being a top 5 school, even though they lost to A&M. The thing is, man, I mean, at the end of the day, Alabama's still the best one-loss team in the country. There shouldn't be really an argument to be made there on why they're considered top 4. I mean, if you look at other the one-loss schools like Oregon, Ohio State, Michigan, Oklahoma State, what's the deal with that? I mean, who's the best? I think more of the issue comes at their position than their actual being in the playoff, more or less. There's just them being number 2 behind Georgia, especially with other teams maybe trying to. Really, only 2 or 3 other schools trying to justify their position at number 2, but really, a big shocker would be coming to number 3 as a team that just really at the beginning of the season came out of nowhere, was unranked until I think it was about week 4 when they finally got their rank after beating Miami, Michigan State, riding high off Heisman hopeful Kenneth Walker III, and overall having an excellent start to the season. They just took care of Michigan in a very high stakes game It almost looked like it was going to be a Michigan win until a late rally by Michigan State put the game tied at 30, and then a field goal by Michigan, and then Kenneth Walker III had a clutch touchdown late into the fourth quarter, giving the Spartans the win, as it once again, emphasizes that Jim Harbaugh cannot win big games.
Agreed.
So
I mean, it just happens again and again and again. He has a losing record against MSU, and of course, he's never beaten Ohio State before. So this just happens like every single year, and people are still shocked by it, and I just don't get it.
yeah, it's just like how many's enough? Like I'm gonna be honest. Like if you're like, I understand he puts together wins, right? He averages about 9 wins a season, and they came up, all the way up to numbers. What were they entering this game? I think they're number 6 against Michigan State. Their offense has not, like, that's one of the big things about their offense that hasn't really been undone or hasn't really been talked about. But like, very early on the season, this Michigan team did not produce any turnovers on offense, and they were smart. They played smart football, and they scored. But now we get into the later stretch, Michigan's gonna have to start playing. They still have to play. They just played Michigan State, but they still have to play Penn State and Ohio State. But the Big Ten East race has just gotten really like. It's now coming down between Michigan State and Ohio State. Penn State was in the mix until they lost that 9 overtime stinker to Illinois.
Yeah.
Which took them out of the race and took them really out of the talk. So now it's really come down to 2 teams, and Michigan just hopes that Michigan State or Ohio State start losing against, Michigan State has to play Purdue, Maryland, Penn State, along with Ohio State, but currently right now it may look like the Spartans may fill in the spot as the 3rd team, or one of the Big Ten's representative. But another point to really talk about is that should there be another representative in the Big Ten, which has gotten to the point of Oregon versus Ohio State. Now, the real argument to this is that Oregon did beat Ohio State. That's like really the only emphasis, like the only real reason Oregon is at this position above Ohio State, even though Ohio State is still boasting one of the best offenses in the nation with Stroud and his band of top flight receivers. I mean, they had the best offense in the country. Oregon did beat them, but I mean, Oregon also lost to Stanford, so it's like, where does that kind of, I mean, like, think about it. Where does that kind of like fill in? Right? Is Oregon like absolutely, despite the win against Ohio State, can you fully like guarantee that they're still better than Ohio State?
I think a head-to-head win pretty much guarantees you have to put them ahead until they lose another game. That's how I see it. I think if you have 2 teams with the exact same amount of losses, the only fair way to rank them is if you rank the team that beat them ahead of them. There's just no other way for it to make any sense. That's just how I see it.
And that's completely fair. I mean, I have Oregon in my personal top and in my personal list of the top 6 in the playoff hunt. I mean, they are ahead of Ohio State for me, but like, understandably for a lot of fans, or that loss against Stanford really hurts them. And the fact that after that Ohio State game, it's kind of hard to evaluate Oregon as a top flight program just on the fact that they're playing in a pretty mediocre conference in the Pac-12. Their best opponent all year, other than the Ohio State game, was against UCLA. And UCLA gave them almost a run for their money. I mean, they almost beat them. They only beat them by 3 points. So I mean, I don't know. And you also got to count that opening almost lost to Fresno. But then again, Ohio State also like they've had some blunders, like the what should have been a what should have been a blowout game against Tulsa turned into it being somewhat competitive until I think it was really just until garbage time when Ohio State was just running up the scoreboard. But that's just how it is. It's hard. I mean, as we look right now, I mean, both in the coaches poll and the AP poll, Ohio State is above Oregon. Just want to make that clear.
So is Oregon ahead of OSU in the college football playoff poll?
Yes.
Okay, good.
This is like the only points where like that differs. And this is Oregon's highest ranking in any poll in the country because I mean the AP
wait,
poll,
what number is Oregon at? 4?
Oregon's at 4 in the college football playoff poll. They're 7th in the AP and the coaches poll.
Well,
but speaking of the coaches poll and really that having a real, how different these two, like how different they both evaluate teams, is the case of Cincinnati, currently sitting at 8-0, but 6th in the country, despite being 2nd in both in the coaches poll and the AP poll. Which I mean, that just shows you how much. I mean, the bias against group of 5 schools. I mean, that's always been known, but like that's ridiculous. I find it completely ridiculous how Cincinnati is not even in top 5. They have no losses. They beat every team they played. They've had one of the best non-conference wins of the top 10 because they beat Notre Dame at home or on the road in convincing fashion. Makes no sense to me why this team isn't top 5. And not even remotely considered for a playoff. They literally have to just hope that Michigan State and Ohio State somehow offset wins and Oregon loses another game. I mean, it's ridiculous. It just really
is ridiculous. Yes, it is. It is ridiculous.
It's even more ridiculous because I'm pretty sure in the average where every team in the country is evaluated in terms of average like ranking, I'm pretty sure the American has like a higher ranking than Pac-12 schools. So like, what's that about? Here, I may be lying about that.
Yeah,
but like,
it's weird, definitely.
I remember like the Pac-12 has a losing record against the Mountain West. So like, I mean, what's the deal there? So,
that too. So it's all strange. You're right.
It's all yeah. It's completely ridiculous. But number 7 through 10 is where it starts to get like a little bit more interesting. Michigan has that loss against Michigan State, but the committee still thinks they can play good football, which I'm fine with. But especially in the Southwest region of the United States, especially ones in the Oklahoma State, are outraged by Oklahoma's 8th place ranking despite being undefeated and being top 4 in each the AP and coaches poll. But that's where me and I say the college football committee agree on this, because you look at 8-0 and you say, oh, this is a good team. However, the college football playoff has taken the eye test with Oklahoma and have realized this team isn't as good as as advertised, which is completely justifiable. I mean, they had a good win against Texas Tech, but remember the game against Kansas, they almost lost against Kansas. They were trailing against Kansas going into halftime, not even scoring until the second half. And they really needed a real bad referee call to get out of a sticky 4th and 1 situation, which could have had a Kansas score a touchdown and potentially won the game. But it's just like, you look at, I mean, the 2 most impressive like Oklahoma wins in terms of the margin of victory I'm not counting the game against West Carolina. They beat TCU by 21. All right. Okay. They beat Texas Tech by 31. All right, then. Other than that, those are their two only wins this season, excluding the game against West Carolina, where they beat a team by double-digit points. I mean, they should have lost against Texas. Really, I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
The Tulane game shouldn't have been as close as it was, but it was. But just really not. I mean, I honestly agree with Oklahoma at 8. But continuing down the list, Wake Forest is at number 9. Their highest. I'm pretty sure they've ever been in any poll, as they are. Well, I mean, what can you say? Wake Forest is the product of the entire ACC really falling off. I mean, they haven't played a ranked opponent in there. I mean, they haven't played a ranked opponent in their, on their entire schedule. They do play NC State in a couple weeks. That's about it. All the other teams have been unranked. Which, I mean, that's no fault of Wake Forest. That's just the fault of the ACC. But it's just that's just interesting how Wake Forest has managed to be 9th in the country.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. That's big for obvious reasons.
And good on them. Good on Wake Forest. Notre Dame rounds out the top 10 at 10. Remember that only loss against Cincinnati. They've managed to kind of string together back a couple good wins. They beat USC pretty convincing fashion. They beat North Carolina by 10 points. But 11 through 15 go as Oklahoma State. They lost against Iowa State, which really kind of has derailed not only their chances at playoff, but potentially derailed their chances at the Big 12 championship game. Baylor is sitting at 7-1, looking really after beating Texas. By the way, Texas has had another game where they were leading going into the fourth quarter and ended up losing. So this really shows you that they have beaten quality opponents. They did beat BYU. They've beaten BYU. They've beaten Texas, which is still a good win. They beat Iowa State. All right. Iowa State did beat Oklahoma State. And guess what? Baylor lost to Oklahoma State. So,
yeah.
Just kind of everyone canceling each other out in the Big 12. But they have a tough road ahead of them. They still have to play Oklahoma, which may be a rematch or may go into another game where they end up playing each other again for the Big 12 championship. But that's another team that was really that's another team that that's in the top 15 that were unranked going into the first preseason polls. Pretty crazy. But going down the list, Auburn at 6-2. Auburn still has a chance to win the SEC West.
They do, theoretically, yeah.
I mean, all they have to do is they have to win out and beat Bama, and they're in the SEC championship game.
Yeah.
At 2 losses too. They lost to Penn State, which is looking like a worse and worse loss week by week, and then they lost to Georgia, which was it's a good loss. So
yes.
A&M sitting at 14th because there's just been an extremely weird team. I mean, they were falling off a cliff. They were unranked at one point, and then they beat Bama, and then they were ranked again. Then they strung together 2 wins against Missouri and South Carolina. And they're playing. Oh yeah, they're playing this Saturday. BYU's at 15th. They lost again. I'm pretty sure. Baylor. After losing against Boise State, they lost to Baylor. They've strung out 2 back-to-back wins also. But really, their chances at a potential New Year's 6 game are dwindling. Ole Miss is sitting at 16. They did lose to Auburn, which, I mean, sucks for them, but they may have a potential Heisman winner. You know, Matt Corral has emerged from, like, I remember he was a dark horse pick for a potential Heisman winner, but, like, considering how the rest of the Heisman, like, favorites from the preseason have fallen off, I mean, he's kind of emerged as, like, a potential front runner, but we'll see as we go forward. Speaking of Mississippi State at 17th, which was honestly the most questionable decision by the playoff committee. They were unranked in both the polls, the coaches, and the AP Top 25, but the committee decides, hey, let's put them at 17 despite having 3 losses, which makes 0 sense. But, do you think they really only ranked Mississippi State just to give Bama a ranked win? It's feeling like it because Mississippi State should not be in the top 25.
They shouldn't be.
They're set possible. And they're playing. I mean, look. They're at 3 losses, and like they're not even like in a potential transitional or a late spot. They're 17th. That's a pretty secure spot, which is ridiculous. Which, what helped them get to this position is beating Kentucky at home, because like Mississippi State's one of those teams that are just like to play weird football and beat A&M and Kentucky, but also lose to Memphis and almost lose to Louisiana Tech. But I digress. I guess that's what the leach system does to your team. 19 North Carolina State. They've played impressive football. It's either them or Wake Forest for the Atlantic title. So I think they play in a couple weeks. Minnesota at 20th. Wisconsin is at 21st. Crazy considering that, they just destroyed Iowa. Speaking of Iowa, they're at 22nd. This team was second in the country, and then they've had back-to-back losses, which leaves them on a potential road to being unranked. Fresno State's at 23rd, San Diego State 24th, and Pitt rounds out at 25th. Overall, there's a couple problems with this. First of all, where are the group of 5 schools? Really?
Yeah.
Texas San Antonio is 18th in the country in the AP coaches poll, and in the and they're 16th in the 16th in the AP poll. They're 18th in the coaches poll. They're undefeated. Where are they at?
Yeah, it's very disrespectful by the playoff committee, in my opinion. I think they did a fucking horrible job.
Look at this. Look, they beat Memphis. Do you know who didn't beat Memphis? Mississippi State. They beat Louisiana Tech by more than 1 point. Do you know who didn't? Mississippi State. Why are they not in it? Why is SMU not in it? Where's Houston at? Huh? Coastal Carolina? It's getting ridiculous, man. It makes no sense. I hate this. Just like Christ, the bias is getting real bad. But what are you gonna do? But all right, I'm gonna go ahead. Let's talk about our playoffs. So, in my personal, I'll count the top 6, because these are really the, that's window and playoff schools. So it's I will say this, all the top 6 teams in my playoff ranking are the same in the college football playoff rankings. However, I do have them rearranged. UGA and Alabama I have at number 1 and 2 because of the fact that Georgia and Alabama still very good despite the loss to A&M. Number 3 and 4 I've had to kind of think about on where I put Michigan State and Cincinnati. I think Michigan State continues to be 3. Cincinnati will be 4th, but they're very neck and neck to me. I guess really giving Cincinnati an edge here because Michigan State didn't really have the expectation factor, but They're
Yeah.
almost neck and neck for 3 and 4. But 5 and 6, I have Oregon and then Ohio State. Just the fact that Oregon still has that win over Ohio State. But I mean, other than that, I don't really think at this point Oregon has convinced anyone that they're a college football playoff team other than that win at Ohio State, which, really has been offset by their loss to Stanford and not really playing anyone impressive, but that's just how it is for the Pac-12. In terms of teams I have on the bubble, also in a very they're far off, but really 7 in no particular order, 7 through 10. I have Michigan, Oklahoma for the reasons I put. I have Wake Forest, and I also have Oklahoma State. So Notre Dame, I just don't know about Notre Dame. They're just, they were very unimpressive going the first 4 weeks of the season, and then now they're kind of just sitting there, just hoping they get into a New Year's Six game. But Hog, what's your top 6 looking like?
Actually, the same as yours. I pretty much agree with everything you said.
Well then, that makes it.
Since maybe you could say Cincinnati gets switched up with Alabama, but other than that, it's that's how I see it.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that's how a lot of other people see it. Other than Oregon at 4, that's really one of the big talking points is if Oregon should even be at number 4. But you can't really put Ohio State ahead of them because Oregon did beat Ohio State. Even then, Oregon lost Stanford. Oregon hasn't really played anyone significant. And really, their best wins are not really the Fresno State win. Now that helps them because Fresno State's a ranked team. But other than that, it's just what are we gonna do? But let's go ahead and get into the stop talking about this shenanigans.
Yeah.
But let's talk about head coaching stuff. Really 3 major firings going on. The first, Texas Tech head coach, I forgot what his name is. He was fired a couple weeks ago before the Oklahoma game. Even though Texas Tech is, they're a middle-of-the-pack Big 12 school at this moment. They're just not really playing. They haven't really gotten any impressive wins. Then again, they haven't had any really suffering losses. They're just kind of in the middle. Houston, that may be. Houston's a pretty impressive win. Okay, well I'll give you that. But that's about it. They played. They lost to Texas. They let up 70 on Texas. By the way, they lost to TCU. They lost to Kansas State by 1 point. They just got smacked by Oklahoma. But that's not the only Big 12 firing or resigning, really. Because Gary Patterson, unexpectedly, out as the TCU head coach. This is really unexpected. He's been at TCU for, I think about 20 years or even more than that. And yes, TCU isn't, and I get TCU is not really having their best season. They haven't really they're 1-4 in conference play. They're 3-5, but that's so shocking though. That's Gary Patterson's been there forever. He's been kind of the he's.
Wait, did they fire him?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's.
Or he resigned. Whoa. I forgot what was but he's out. But it's just really shocking. I think he was the second longest tenured coach in football, but he got them to national on a national level. It's wild to think that Patterson's, especially at this point in the season, this isn't a late season. This was in the middle. This was last week. This was earlier this week. Yes, TCU is not too good right now, but just really, you're not going to see how the rest of the season potentially could play out. I don't know. Really weird. But I mean, hey, Gary.
Actually, he resigned. He wasn't fired.
Oh, but like, still pretty weird. Sorry if he's fired, but like he's out though. Like he's out of like what? What I mean, it's like that's super weird. How he just like he's out.
Yeah, I mean he was coaching there for about 22 seasons, so it's going to be very odd not to see Patterson.
Yeah, and then we'll touch on the news up in up north. Washington State football coach. I think this was also a couple weeks ago, but we didn't touch on it. But Nick Rolovich is out, not because of performance, not because of any sort of scandal. It was just the fact that he failed to comply with the state's COVID-19 vaccine policy. Because I'm pretty sure Washington State has like they're having that policy where, you know, you have to be vaccinated to work, and he just didn't want that. And he was fired. He's outed as the Washington State coach. How long he hasn't been coaching there really long as the head coach role, because he took over after, pretty sure he took over after Leach, who Leach left in, I think it was after 2019.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's really weird. But he's appealing this, so like I don't know what's gonna happen. It's probably some kind of like extreme like potential court case. But let's stop talking about firings, because like, you know, firings is, that's very negative. Okay, he was head coach at Hawaii for that little bit. He's also Arena Bowl champion. Okay, good for him. But who do you say got hired as the head coach for Georgia Southern? Wasn't it our old friend
Clay Helton?
Clay
Yes, sir.
Helton, literally going from the penthouse to the outhouse. Like going
You
from
be correct.
like going from
USC to Georgia Southern.
Going from USC, which is a blue blood football program, to a rural school in southern Georgia, who just not too long ago was still playing FCS football. All right, whatever. But hey, good for him. As maybe that's where he's gonna find his stride in the Sun Belt universe. But speaking of Sun Belt, really more realignment news to talk about in the CUSA sweepstakes, because like it's still getting really like it's still getting kind of weird and complex. But so they've extended so they're losing Marshall, Old Dominion, Southern Miss. They also are losing Middle Tennessee and West Kentucky to the MAC conference, which I'm surprised Middle Tennessee is even going to be considered a MAC school when we're going to have to play teams in Michigan, stuff like that. But hey, I know a lot of like teams that were in the old Ohio Valley Conference also like played against Middle Tennessee. I think Akron and like some of the other Ohio schools. But hey, I'm glad the 100 Miles of Hate rivalry is still renewed. But other than that, James Madison, who won the FCS football title a couple years back, is going to the Sun Belt, which, hey, that's not a bad deal for them. I mean, James Madison is a powerhouse on the eastern side of the FCS world. Go ahead. But another real like big factor or a real big talking point is the CUSA is going to welcome Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston State. Sam Houston, another FCS title winner. Jacksonville State, forgot when the last time. I think they used to be in the Ohio Valley, but they've switched around. I'm pretty sure they're in the WAC
They beat FSU as well.
They did beat FSU. But
I did remember hearing rumors that Conference he was going to add Tarleton State.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that last episode. But Liberty also got extended an invite. Well, Liberty is undefeated, and they've had some really interesting national news. Not relating to their football school, but I mean,
Really? Oh, I already know what you're talking about.
yeah, I don't think we can talk about it on there.
No, we don't really need to. There's no reason. It doesn't
But
relate
yeah,
to the
really
football
interesting to still have them invited after all that. But really the exception, like the outlier in the whole CUSA expansion, New Mexico State, known as the worst football program in FBS football. They're finding a home again in the CUSA. They were in the WAC, and then the WAC died, and then they were independent for a long time, and really not really that well, really not sustainable as a independent school in New Mexico, and they really didn't have that prestige, and that's why they were the worst in. But anywho, apparently UConn got reached out to join in football, but UConn said no because, like, I think it was A, logistics, and B, the fact that that's the reason they left the American, because, like, the Big East.
And C, their poverty.
And, well, I mean, they invited New Mexico State, so, like, they don't have standards, so. But, hey, CUSA may be surviving longer than what I probably expect them to, but I think that's enough in like the off the field. Unless you want to talk about the monkey story, which has been.
I didn't even. I wasn't it like one of the Texas coach's girlfriends who had a monkey and attacked somebody.
So, the Texas. Okay, so this was after they lost. So Jeff Banks is the special teams coach for the University of Texas, right? It was Halloween.
Yeah.
He has a girlfriend who happens to be a stripper, who happens to also own a monkey, who apparently is in the stripping routine, and in her stripping routine. but long story short, the monkey did attack a small child and bit him, which is like, that's so Texas. So Texas, owning a monkey, not only blowing another game you should have won against Baylor, but also just the fact that, well, a monkey attacks a kid on Halloween. That's just funny. But that's enough. I think that's enough of the off season or the off field stuff. Let's go ahead. Get to the picks for this Saturday's games, November 6th. Gotta say, not the strongest like week in college football. There's only one ranked versus ranked team matchup, but we'll get that when we get to that. Number 1, Missouri playing against Georgia. With Missouri's defense, I don't expect them to win. Do you also agree on this?
Yeah, I do agree on it.
Yeah, not really interesting there. Georgia's favored by 39.5. That's what the spread.
Yeah, shouldn't be anything worthwhile.
Ohio State at Nebraska. I'm gonna go Ohio State with that one.
Agreed. I think OSU wins.
Wake Forest, North Carolina. This is interesting because like North Carolina was supposed to be the best school out of the state of North Carolina, but no, it seems that Wake Forest has gained that position.
Yeah, they could. I think they'll win though.
Yeah, I think Wake Forest also wins that one. Liberty and Ole Miss is really like a game not to watch out for the football. It's more of just like a prospect because we have two very good prospects at quarterback for both teams. So like Malik Willis for Liberty and Matt Corral obviously for Ole Miss. Really should be interested if you're like a team that needs quarterback these upcoming drafts maybe. So I mean, that should be a fun game to watch. Other than that, Ole Miss is probably going to win that one. But
Agreed. I think they win.
next game, Illinois, Minnesota. Not really, like I said, not a very exciting week in college football. I can't really say.
Yeah, there's really nothing much.
But hey, it's college football. Something stupid may happen. Pittsburgh at Duke. Yeah, Pittsburgh's going to win that one and win the Coastal. This is the year. Kansas State, Kansas this week. Oh boy. Michigan State, Purdue. I think we talked about that one.
Michigan State's going to win.
Does Purdue pull? Could you see Purdue pulling another upset?
No.
No.
Nope. MSU
Then again,
by
Iowa
20.
didn't have an offense, but Michigan State does. So that may give Michigan State the win there. Cal plays Arizona. Arizona's still not won a game yet. Hilarious. Tulsa, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's probably going to win again, but the playoff committee's going to be like, well, remember you gave up a touchdown during garbage time. Sorry, we got to knock points off for that. Navy, Notre Dame. Oklahoma State, West Virginia. That may actually be more competitive. I have Oklahoma State winning that, but it may be close. West Virginia is
Eventually.
I mean, West Virginia did beat Iowa State, and they have been playing very competitively all season. So I mean, I don't know. I may have to reconsider this one. You want to give me West Virginia? That's that upset pick of the week. Why not? Baylor, TCU. We were just talking about this. Patterson. The first Patterson-less game since Christ. Baylor's gonna win that one. Auburn and A&M. Now this is a game that's actually interesting. This is
Only one that's interesting this week.
This is like the game of the week. Auburn A&M. This is really This is a really weird game considering like A&M. They're at 2 losses in the conference. Unless they beat Auburn and Auburn beats Bama, they're out of the conference race. And Mississippi State and Ole Miss find ways to lose. But Auburn's still playing. They still have a shot at the SEC title. Now, at the playoff, I'm not sure. They're at 2 losses that aren't really the best, but... Well, okay. No, that's not true, because I said they lost to Georgia, which is okay, and they lost to Penn State, which is not okay, considering how Penn State's fallen. But who do you have winning this one? This is probably going to be the highlight game of the week.
Give me Auburn.
Auburn. I don't know.
As much as I hate to say it, give me Auburn.
Yeah. I think with Auburn having a shot at the SEC title, like they usually do this where like they have really high expectations and they actually could make a run for the SEC title. Yeah, give me Auburn. It's gonna be fun game to watch though because it's at College Station. But Idaho State BYU. Not really interesting to talk about there. God, dude, this week sucks. Mississippi State, Arkansas. Really should be an unranked versus unranked matchup, but it happens to be a ranked versus unranked matchup because of the playoffs. Playoff bowl. Give me Arkansas, and then so Mississippi State can be unranked.
I'll go with Arkansas.
Yeah. What games should be like a prime matchup for like either team? LSU, Alabama. I know you probably have Bama winning, and you're probably right on that. And I also have Alabama winning. So, I mean, UT against Kentucky. Now, there's a lot of, like, especially, like, where I am, there's a lot of, like, speculation about this game, especially how Kentucky have dropped their last 2 games.
Yeah.
But, like,
That'll be a big one.
this is going to be, like, a very interesting game. Who do you have winning?
Give me Kentucky, actually.
Kentucky. Well, I also have Kentucky winning that one. So, I mean, it's going to be close, though, because, like, Tennessee, these teams are about even, honestly. But,
I agree.
Oregon-Washington is the primetime game for ABC. Which,
Serious? Oh, yeah, because everybody thought that'd be a good game. That's why.
Yeah, but, Washington has no quarterback. Or just
Yeah.
no offense in general. So, yeah, Oregon's going to win that one. Indiana, Michigan. Yeah, it's another game that's, like, should have been good, but isn't.
Give me Michigan.
That's it for the ranked versus ranked games. There's a couple of unranked versus unranked ones. There's some interesting ones. Florida, South Carolina. I'll give Florida a win on that one. Clemson, Louisville.
I can't believe we're actually, like, saying, oh, Clemson's an unranked versus unranked. It's so fucking wild.
Yeah, Texas, Iowa State. There's a lot of mid, like, pack teams trying to beat each other up and try to get bowl eligibility. USC, Arizona State. UTSA, UTEP. That's actually, like, that's a pretty good matchup there. But other than that, just, like, kind of a sleeper week in football. And that kind of sucks. But, I don't know. The week following, like, week 11, it has a little bit more meat to the bones, but, like, it's also, like, kind of not really significant. Then again, like, really, that's how it is for most of November. All the games are just, like, kind of waiting until rivalry week starts. And then that's where, like, really interesting stuff happens. But other than that, I think that's going to wrap up at another episode of this. We will talk to y'all later next week. We'll talk about week 2 of the week 2 rankings and any other silly stuff that happens. We'll holler at you later.
See ya.